when it was launched there. That's where it was launched, in Evansville, Indiana. We had picked it up in Chicago. Well, we had gone to Chicago, picked it up in Evansville, came down to New Orleans, went along the Gulf, around Florida, and I noticed Florida, the sand was real white. It looked like snow almost, you know. And that's when we went up to Boston and on up, and then we got to England, and then we maneuvered all kinds of practices in the English Channel and the bays. Then the first part of June, they had no more communication. We couldn't get off the ship, so that we knew we was headed for England. So we were supposed to go there on the 5th, which was the day before D-Day. But they had postponed it another day because the weather was real rough. So we took our time going from England to France. And we got there on D-Day around noontime. And we just watched everybody trying to get into the beach. And then we got orders to go in. And so at 5 o'clock we started going in. But it looked pretty rough because everything in front of us was getting blasted by those 88s in the cliffs. And I saw one LCI get hit. And I saw one guy flying into the water, and we got to within less than a half a mile, about a quarter of a mile from the beach, when a destroyer, or destroyer escort, got in between us and the shore batteries. The 88s were in there, and he was pounding at those 88s. And he actually drew the fire away from us. Then we got orders to stop and head back out, because it was just suicide to try and get in, especially with our cargo. We wouldn't have been able to bring it intact. So we anchored. They told us to anchor right there within a mile, or less than a mile, from the beach. And the rest of the convoy, 4,000 or 5,000 ships were out there, about 5 miles out. First thing I knew, we had a bunch of rhinos, that's platforms with those motors on them. We had 3 of them tied up alongside of us, and they were bringing the wounded, and first thing we knew, we had a bunch of doctors coming in, and they were operating on the deck of the ship, and we even had a German prisoner. And I could speak French. I tried speaking French to him, but he didn't understand that either. And English he couldn't understand, so he was German. So anyway, I left them alone and went up to the radio shack. And everybody in our crew's quarters, well, my bunk was a bloody mess. I couldn't use it until after we had gotten back to England and cleaned it up and put a new mattress and new linen on it. I forgot where it was now, but we stayed there for the night, and then of course in that part of the world, it's so far north that the days are real long and the nights are short. So the sun doesn't go down till after 11 o'clock at night, or almost midnight, and the sun comes up early in the morning, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, the sun comes up. So when the sun went down, the plane came over and tried to straffle us, but we had these barrage balloons with wires, so they didn't get too close. Somebody thought that he had hit one of our wires and had fallen next to our ship over there, but I didn't see that. Then some more German planes came over, but they were going for the 5 miles out. They were going for the fleet. So 4,000 or 5,000 ships with cannons and tracers. You talk about the fireworks. That was the biggest and greatest firework display I've seen in my life. I mean, there was, and every hour they would come and they would try and straffle and drop bombs and drop mines in the, on the fleet. And so for 3-4 raids we had that night, until next morning the battleship opened up with their big cannons, and I could hear those shells go right over our ship. They'd get mad at me if I called it a boat. You could hear those shells whine, just whistles by. So they would do that for 20 minutes to a half hour, and then take a break, and then they would do it again. From 8 o'clock until noon they did that. Then at noontime they gave us orders to try and go into the beach. So here we go again. We let loose of all our rhinos and everything that was on board our ship, and get rid of quite a few of our patients or soldiers who were wounded, and they cleaned it all up, put them on boats, and brought them to the fleet, and then we tried to go in. So we got pretty close to the beach, when instead of going in, our skipper made a right-hand turn and headed west towards Utah Beach. And we kept going, and every mile or so we would make a left-hand turn to try and go in again, and then he didn't like it, I guess, so he would turn back and go down another. So we was going on that beach there from the right to the left, going towards Utah Beach, more or less. And we saw a hill there in between Utah Beach and Omaha Beach, and I think that's where he decided to go in. But before he got there, he had let one of our sailors swim ashore after we got by the river to see how the land looks, see where it would be safe, almost safer to try and land. So he got to that hill, and that's where we tried to go in. So when we started in, we knew we were going in because he dropped the stern anchor so that he can pull us out after we tried to go back out. And we got up to the beach where all the obstacles were, and the guy in the forecastle, he told the skipper that there was obstacles right dead ahead. So he tried to brake and pull on the stern anchor to stop the ship from going into those obstacles, and we stopped short of them within 5-10 feet probably. So we stayed there for an hour or so until the water went down. Then they opened up the bow doors. But before doing that, the CBs were in there, and they were with rifles popping off those mines that were on these obstacles. Now, those were like jack-o'-lanterns with mines on the ends of them. And then they had obstructions with poles, and they had mines on it. It was really 3 rows of different types of mines. So they pulled off. They put chains on a tractor, and they pulled off some of those obstacles after they got the mines blown up. So they made a path wide enough so they could put a iron steel mesh so that they could roll the tanks and the cannons off the beach without sinking into the sand. and off the beach onto the hards. Because the sand over there is really soft and everything would sink right in. So we heard the rumor that 2 or 3 hours after that we had unloaded this load of 101 infantry, that they had stopped some tanks and had salvaged or saved them from coming and retaking the beach. Come about 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, it was time to try and get off the beach. Well, while we was on the beach, I even went out on the beach trying to find some shells, a souvenir of France. So I found 2, 3, 4 of them, then I started thinking if there's any I could get shot at over there, I'd better get back on board ship. So I got back on board ship with my shells, and around 8 o'clock we started pulling on the stern anchor, and the propellers going in the backwards, trying to pull off the beach, but it wouldn't move. So we had to wait until almost 9 o'clock, 9:15, before the ship started floating enough so that it was able to pull off the beach. So we pulled off the beach, we turned around and headed back out towards the fleet, and we got congratulated by the admiralship and everybody there for being the first LSD to land our cargo intact. Because before that, only the small boats were able to get in. And so instead of waiting for the next day or everybody else to get rid of their cargo, we decided to go back to England. That is, the skipper decided to go back to England. So we had to go back on radar and radio watch on our own to keep contact with what was going on. And we headed to England and got another load and headed back for France. And this time we went to Omaha Beach, but it was altogether different than what we had seen the first time before, because they had sunk a lot of ships and barges to cut the undercurrent so the ships could be able to go in and out without being, I don't know, I wasn't the skipper, but that was what it looked like on the second trip in. So we unloaded our second trip in, went back out to England again, and loaded up again with another load and started back for France on our third trip, and we was trying to catch up to a convoy that was back on their second load. So we was on our third trip in, and we were trying to catch up with the second trip in. So we caught up with that second convoy about the middle of the channel, and so we secured our radar and radio, and I was able to go down and get some sleep. So I got into my bunk and slept, and then I noticed that around 20 minutes of 8 that the boys were having their breakfast, and I says, I need my sleep more than I need that food. So I just turned over and went back to sleep. Well, I just started nosing off when I felt my bunk go up. I knew we were hit, so I squeezed my life belt and got it inflated so that at least they would find my body if it would float if I didn't come out of there alive. Then everything went dark and I could feel the water, and then I saw a little bit of light, and I thank God for still being alive. And then I started trying to see how I was going to get out of that hole, because the ship had, the deck, the floor had folded up, and I was in between the bulkhead, that's like a wall, and that's what saved me from the concussion. So I pulled on one of the cables, wire, big heavy cable, and that broke. says I could have got electrocuted, so I grabbed another cable, tested it for shocks, no. And so I grabbed myself and pulled myself out of that hole, and then I came down onto what was left of that deck there, and then I could see a big hole. And I was figuring, how the heck you're gonna dive into that hole without hitting that propeller, the screws, when I saw a guy come in from the other side, from the other end, and he got to the edge of the thing, and he was much lower than I was. I was much higher. And I said, well, I guess I'll let him go first. So he dove in, and I was going to dive in to see if I could help him also, when another guy came from behind me, and he says, don't jump in, Gene. He says, there must be another way out of here. So we started going around and trying to get to where the doors were. But the doors were jammed, you couldn't open them. But some guys from the top side came down, and they helped us push, and we pulled, and they got the door open. So he went up that stairway, and I saw this guy, or this locker on top of this guy, and I said, oh, Jesus. So I says, I'm going to see if I can, you know, push that locker off of him. This is where you're supposed to get superhuman strength, you know. So I grabbed the locker, and oh my gosh, I only barely budged it. But then the boatswain's mate came in from the other side, and between the two of us, we pushed that locker off. He grabbed his shoulders, I grabbed his feet and legs, and we pulled him out of there. But then he threw him over his shoulder, and he started going up the sideways. And I says, I'm in my stocking feet, and I said, I'm going up the top side to see what the situation is before I get caught down here. So I went up top side, and I was greeted by my shipmate, the one that had gone up there. He was crying, telling the boys to go down and get me, that I was still down there. So I made it to the radio shack, and in these emergencies, I was trained to, you know, take all the confidential stuff and put it in a bag and give it to your skipper, captain. And so I grabbed all the secret material and then brought it to him, and he put it in his. But the ship didn't sink, and we got towed the rest of the way into France, where we unloaded. And then some ship fitters came over and welded some big plates where the ship was cracked so that it would stay together. And they towed us back to England. And then everybody got off except for the skeleton crew. The skeleton crew is one radio man, one signalman, one, you know, so 3/4 of our crew was left offshore. And I decided that I wasn't going to stay with the ship, and one of my radio men decided he wanted to stay with the ship. So he stayed with the ship, and the ship was taken and towed back to Brooklyn, New York, where it was cut. And they took the back end of another LST, and they welded them together and made another LST out of it. I got off in England and was sent to Tent City. Now, Tent City is where all the survivors and everything were sent. So we was in a tent, and I slept on a one of those bunks that cot, yeah. And I woke up around 6 o'clock that morning with a big bang. One of the first, I forget what they call them now, buzz bombs, landed about 1,000 feet from me. And of course, I was still tense from what I had been through. So I jumped out of my bunk that morning, and I saw several attacks of buzz bombs while I was there. One time I even crawled underneath some railroad, the railroad yard, underneath some railroad cars. And I started thinking, those guys are after this, you know, these railroads. I'd better get out of here. I'm in the wrong place. So I got out of there and went into a shelter. And so I stayed there in England driving trucks. I was driving truck, and I was lugging those oxygen tanks from here to there, transporting soldiers from there to here, cargo. I was a truck driver, and I was driving all over England. Of course, in England, you have to drive on the left side. So I had to get used to that, or I had to get used to driving on the right side when I got back to the States, because I came out of a filling station and I started driving on the left-hand side of the road. I said, whoa, whoa, I'm not in England. Let's get back on the right side of the road. So I was in England for about, let's see, the end of July. Of course, my oldest son was born the 31st of July, so this all happened while I was overseas, and even though he was born, because I didn't get any mail until in August. And so I was there in August, September, and then late September, October, I was shipped to Scotland, Glasgow. That's up high, about 200-300 feet up on the cliffs there. You can see the ocean pretty well from up there. And was on the Queen Mary to come back to the States as a survivor. And we was packed like sardines, and must have been thousands and thousands of us in there going back to the States. One day it was hot than heck because we was in the Gulf Stream. The next day was cold because we was close to Iceland, trying to dodge away from the submarines. And we finally got into New York, but it was a much faster trip than it was going up. I think it took about a week, where it took a month to get to England. So I got the survivor's leave of 30 days while I was over in the States. Then I got assigned to another LST, picked it up in Evansville, Indiana. No, I went to Chicago first. Then we picked it up in Evansville, went through New Orleans, went through the Panama Canal. That was interesting, the Panama Canal, where they drive you into these locks, and then they raise the water so that you can get into the next one, and the reverse if you're going the other way. Then we hit the Pacific Ocean, and that was just as calm as a lake. They talk about the ocean being peaceful. It is. The Pacific is very peaceful. And we went to San Diego, and then we went to Hawaii, and I went to Pearl Harbor and saw the ships that were sunk over there, and took a tour of the bluffs. And I was doing pretty good there. I was a radioman second class by then, because I got rated second class. Being a survivor of the first, I was treated like a king. And, that was good. I was the postman on board ship. I was the first one to get off the ship to see the shores. But that broke down with I coughed up blood. And when I was in the sun, that's what would bring it up. So I'd been coming down with TB, didn't even know it. And you get TB from overworking, not getting enough sleep, being hard on your body, and not getting proper. So I spent, so I was in Hawaii, the hospital, and then they shipped me to Oakland, California, where I was hospitalized there for 7 or 8 months. And then they discharged me as cured. Of course, I broke down again 5 years later because I didn't believe him to take care of my health. I'd been working for Sears Roebuck as a serviceman. And I went to Oakland Naval Hospital where they cured me. And after 8-10 months over there, I couldn't take it no more, so I went home, stayed 5 months, went back in to check, see how I was doing, and they said, "You're doing great. Now all we got to do is open you up and take off that part out of your lungs so you don't break down again." I said, "Oh, no, you don't." So I went out again, and they told me, well, if I could stay from not breaking down again for 20 years, I could consider myself cured. So that was about 50 years ago. So I think I licked that one. So
Which makes you how old today?
I'm 91, going to be 92 this summer. So I've lived a long life, but I stopped smoking back in 1952 and I took care of my health from then on. I started my own music store because I was a musician and loved music, and Keene did not offer much of any accessories or things for guitars. They ask you, what is a guitar? They didn't know. And that's another story. But I retired myself 20 some odd years ago, and I'm still playing 2-3 times a week, not for the money, for the entertainment of the old folks, because they love the kind of music that I was doing then and the kind of music we had back then. And that's what I've been promoting: guitars, guitar music, country music, bluegrass music, because rock and roll came in. I accepted that and did some rock and roll. But I still love and prefer the country music. But you got to get used to it and listen to it before you can appreciate it. So the old folks in nursing homes that are younger than me and not as handy, they're all handicapped, and I'm still doing great. But I attribute it because I'm doing what I love, what I enjoy, and that's playing music, and playing music to people who enjoy that type of music. And we play out professionally off and on for money, but most of the time that's not important. We play for the fun of it, for the love of it. Any questions? Okay, ladies for gents.
I don't know if this is related, but I just wanted to know how you met your wife.
How I met my wife? Oh, that's interesting. Well, I was playing in the Keene area. I'd been in the West Swansea CC camps, and my car had broken down after I got out of the CC camps. I was still playing with a group in the Keene area, and my car broke down, so I had to go play. So I hitchhiked from Nashua, that's where I lived at the town, to Keene, and I got a ride from a fella in Dublin that lived across from where my wife lived. So he dropped me off in front of my wife's house, and he went to in his house. And I kept seeing this girl looking out the door curtain. She looked kind of cute, you know. I said, I wonder if this could be my calling or whatever, you know. So after half an hour waiting outside for cars to go by so that I get a ride into Keene, nobody stopped. Her brother decided they were going to Keene anyway, so let's pick up the poor guy, give him a ride to Keene. And she told her mother, don't let him sit next to me. So she was in the back seat, her mother, and they had me on the side with her mother. So she was playing hard to get, I guess. So on the way to Keene, her mother told me that her son played guitar and her daughter played guitar. That was interesting. So I says, well, I play in Keene or on the other side of Keene there every week, and I come back. Sometimes I stay overnight had some friends I had in Keene about stopping in on a Sunday and having a little jam session on my return to Nashway. Sure. So the following week my car was all going, so I used my car and